Hey, I think we are hopefully set up. Thank you for your patience. I'm gonna go ahead and I'll set up here. Okay. So hello, everyone. We've got a couple people still waiting in the waiting room. Abby, would you be willing to let them in?
I think you will need to make me co-host as well in order to do that.
Yeah. There we go. I am just having a heck of a time today. There we go. Is everyone seeing my screen now? I hope. Yeah. Well, so we're gonna get started now. Thank you so much for your time, and this is our final work group meeting. And so I do appreciate you spending the time and sharing your expertise with us as we move forward with developing this rule set. I want to quickly go over our meeting agenda. So we're going to review the meeting norms. We're going to go over some outdoor nature-based licensing guiding principles. We have our work group guiding questions, follow-up and feedback, and this is more of a summary of everything that we've talked about before. And then the discussion topics, we're going to break into starting to discuss about determining capacity. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to go ahead and conclude with our other discussion topics of emergency preparedness. But before we get started, I just wanted to do quick introductions. My name is Carol Peterson, and I am going to be facilitating this discussion tonight. And I will pass it off to my co-worker, Abby Strom.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Abby Strom, and I am an operations and policy analyst with the Child Care Licensing Division. And I will pass it to Ronnie.
Sorry. Hi, everybody. My name is Ronnie Pham. I'm a child care quality specialist. I am going to be taking notes today, so I will be off camera, but I will only pop on camera if I have questions. So thank you for being here. And I'm passing it to Alicia.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks so much for taking your time out of your busy day to be with us. My name is Alicia Gardiner, and I am the Child Care Licensing Division Director. It's so nice to be here with you this evening, and I'm going to pass it back to Carol. Do we do introductions all around, or how does this work?
We absolutely we can. I do have one, if somebody can help me with PowerPoint really quick. My presenter screen is off. I'm only seeing one screen, so I don't know if anybody has any ideas of what I can do to have the two screens going.
I'll see what I can find.
Okay, thank you. These last couple of last two meetings have been a little bit on the bumpy side.
Carol, if you press the down arrow, would you be able to, on the screen that is showing the slide, is it going to progress to the next agenda slide for you?
Yeah, I could see, but I like to have because I've got little notes and things like that as reminders, and that I'm not capturing.
Okay, thank you.
And if not, we can just roll with it. And I'll keep playing as we kind of move along.
Carol, would it be useful for you if I ran the slides and then that way you can have the other view?
Sure, if I can find the other view. I probably need to make you co-host, right? Okay. And I'll stop sharing. So while we're waiting with the technical difficulties, if everyone would like to go ahead and go around and introduce themselves, that would be fantastic. Joseph, would you like to start?
I'm Joseph Flaherty. I direct an outdoor preschool in Cave Junction, Oregon.
And Rhonda?
Rhonda Schock. I have a nature-based program in Rogue River, Weimer, Oregon.
Okay. And who else is? I thought I saw Kendall. Maybe not. Sage, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
She says that her camera and microphone are not working, but Sage is from Gold Beach.
Great, great. And Rachel? And Rachel may be having technical difficulties too, because she has before in the past. We'll go on to Rebecca.
Hi everyone, I'm glad to be here and also excited that today is our last meeting, but excited to learn more from Southern Oregon. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy Nelson.
Hi, I'm Amy. I work with Outdoor Education Adventures in McMinnville, and I'm a program director. We have a outdoor preschool site as well as after school programs and spring break and summer break camps for kids of all ages.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you all for attending this last meeting. As we, Alicia, do you want to go to the next slide? As we always start off
Carol, yep, Mackenzie's here too. I don't know if Mackenzie got to introduce herself.
I didn't see her name. Mackenzie?
Hi there, I'm Mackenzie Purdom. I'm from Newport, Oregon. I own a Recess Outdoor Adventure School. We have toddler programs with parents. We have a recorded outdoor preschool, and we also have an elementary school as well as camps for all ages.
Great.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you for being here. So as we always start off our meetings with going over the group norms, it's just a way for us to kind of center ourselves in the work. So we want to allow opportunities for all voices to be heard. We can take space and make space. We want to remain focused on the scope of the work group, be open for respectful discussion, and have an open mind and ask clarifying questions to confirm understanding. Encourage and honor individual perspectives and truths, and realize that all experiences are valuable and contribute to our shared understanding. Use the raise hand function or chat for comments. And Abby, like the past meetings, Abby will be monitoring those because we are live streaming right now. And so she will be reading any comments that you put into the chat. And we want to practice active listening. So listen to understand and give time to reflect before responding. And we really want to seek commonality. We may disagree, which is okay, but we will be guided by our shared commitment. Next slide, please. So I'm going to hand this off to Alicia, and Alicia's going to go over some of our ONB licensing guiding principles.
Yeah, hi again, everybody. First of all, just want to reiterate, I'm just very excited to be here and be in the room with you all. I love that we have this new group and new type of care that we get to interact with and build a system together. It's very unique and really what an opportunity. It's very rare that we have individuals approach us and say, hey, like, can we build a licensing system with you? And what do these requirements look like? And just very thrilled about that prospect, and also just thinking about kind of in the bigger picture, what a great move this is for families and children to be able to access full day care in the outdoors and really gain all those benefits that we know from research that children get from being in the outdoors. And so just really excited to be here with you, and wanted to kind of take it to a higher level. I know in this group, you've been really in the weeds on certain requirements and how things look in your program, and working through those details. There's plenty more of that to come, I will say. Just because this is the final group does not mean that this is the last engagement opportunity. We see many more opportunities in the future as we work with national experts, to our neighbors to the north up in Washington who have done these rules before, and then also as we engage with all the practitioners out there in our state. For this work moving forward, we found a benefit in creating some guiding principles and how we're approaching the work. And I'd like to gain your feedback on these today. And this is really our best thinking on when we're stuck or when we're thinking through a particular requirement, where do we need to default to help us guide our decision making on these rules. So I'll walk through the slide with you here, and then I'll pause after that to gain any of your feedback, if there's any additions we should think through or anything else. Just to start, our goal is to develop and implement licensing requirements that ensure the health and safety of children in outdoor nature-based settings. We feel like it's important to call out this goal because we do historically have only had requirements for buildings, right? And so when we think about an absence of a building, we're going to need to be doing things a little bit differently to accommodate for that in our health and safety requirements. So we're going to draw from the expertise, as I have said, based off of a couple of different ways. One is we're going to look at our existing licensing regulations and certified center care mostly, as well as consult with national outdoor nature-based experts. Washington has an active rule set, so we've been consulting with them along the way and continue to do so. The Natural Start Alliance has been a lovely partner for us in helping us provide information on best practice. And then again, looking at our current rules. There are particular rules that are found in center-based care that we assume will just come over without much adjustment, just so we can be aligned. And you can see there in the parentheses, we're talking about things like guidance and discipline, our prohibited punishment rules, our background check rules. All of these things we anticipate will remain the same in concept. Another guiding principle we have would be to incorporate the knowledge and expertise of you, as I've stated. And then there's a bullet here that just says we need to ensure compliance with CCDF. CCDF stands for Child Care Development Fund. And these are, this is a big bucket of money that the state gets for employment-related daycare purposes, as well as funding the licensing system. And within those federal requirements, there are a lot of health and safety topics that we are required to license to in order to receive those funds and distribute those funds to families. And so There, in the parentheses there, you can see our ratios, our background checks, the way we do monitoring visits, the training requirements, the way we follow up on complaints that we receive from the public, as well as there's like these big, broad 11 health and safety topics that are out there as a requirement for the state to receive these funds that we have to have rulemaking on. So we do anticipate that we're going to have to ensure that we as a state are in compliance in order to ensure that outdoor nature-based programs will be able to take advantage of the licensing system as well as employment-related daycare funds. Also, I think this is probably, as we get down to the bottom, probably some of the more important factors in our guiding principles, which is really considering the uniqueness of the physical environments, the materials, and the activities that are inherent in outdoor nature-based programs. And I think the key for us is really, how do we meet the same healthy safety requirements that are found in a traditional program in a building in more flexible ways? The really exciting thing is that we know this can be done, and it will be done here in Oregon. And, flexibility is key for us in trying to think through, okay, typically in a building, you've got emergency exiting to think through, right? And so how does that look when you don't have a building to exit, and just adjusting, right? And making sure that we've gotten the similar kinds of requirements, but in a different kind of manner. So these are our draft guiding principles, and I'm seeing Mackenzie has already put in the chat, strongly recommending adding OELAO, which we can do that. Thank you for that feedback. I will pause and see if there's any other additional feedback that you would have for additions to these. Do you all agree that these are the right guiding principles for CCLD and DELC to have? Rachel has put in the chat, these guidelines are great. I agree that the most common sense approach is simply to duplicate rules from other license types as much as possible to maintain consistency. I'm curious how feedback from outdoor nature-based educators in Washington has been used to review the Washington standards. What is working well and what would they change? That's a great question, Rachel, and we can definitely capture that to look into that as we work very closely with Washington to understand their lessons learned. Amy has mentioned that these look reasonable, and she agrees with Rachel's feedback regarding Washington. And then just scrolling back up, other experts in the field are NAI. Thank you, Mackenzie, for that feedback. Great. Well, I know we have a packed agenda. So I'm very open to hearing from the group again, even after this work group has concluded, if you have any thoughts or suggestions. And so you have Carol's contact information, I believe. So if you have any additional thoughts, we are always open and available to receive those and hear from you again. And I really appreciate the time with you all this evening, and thanks for having me. And I think I'll pass it back to you, Carol.
Okay. So can you advance the slide? Thank you. So as we're moving forward with this work, some guiding questions to keep in mind. How would this requirement look in an outdoor environment? What are the possible financial impacts? Is there available research on recommended best practice? And are there available resources for the particular requirement that we're reviewing? How would these rules support new outdoor nature-based programs as they pursue licensing? And what recommendations do you have to alter the proposed requirement? So if you can go to the next slide. So I don't know, Alicia, would you like to go through this, or would you like me to? I can do it if you would like.
Either way, I'm happy to, whatever you want, Carol. Do you want me to?
Sure.
Okay. So there's been a lot of adjustments made on the feedback that you all have given us over the course of this work group. And so we've tried to summarize that for you on a slide so you can really see what an impact this group has had. So as you can see here, we've heard from you all on the outdoor nature-based definition that this needs to be clear to distinguish ONB program rather than a program that spends the majority of its time outside. So we did make adjustments based on that feedback where you can see we have a definition now of outdoor nature-based childcare means an agency or agency-offered program that enrolls children preschool through school age, provides childcare primarily in an outdoor nature space, and also utilizes a philosophy where nature is central to children's learning and development. We also heard that outdoor nature-based curriculum should be free-flowing, emergent, and not prescriptive to allow for flexibility in learning. So we've taken care of that as well based on your feedback. We removed the reference to outdoor nature-based curriculum from the ONB definition, changed it to read utilizes a philosophy where nature is essential to children's learning and development. So really appreciate your feedback on both of those things. And just we know how critical the pedagogy is here with these types of programs. So we're really excited that, and we hope that we got it right this time. Next, we had a definition of supervision, where we heard that there isn't a difference between active supervision and supervision. So we heard you. We're going to have just one definition for supervision, which will align with certified child care center supervision, heading back to our guiding principles that we've tried to align where possible if it's not specific to the environment and where children are being cared for. We also heard that there were some concerns related to group size and staffing, that 2 teacher qualified staff needing to be with each group of children. So we have made an adjustment there in the draft rules, which state that each group needs to have a caregiver who meets the qualifications of a teacher, and the other staff can be a teacher, aide 2, or aide 1 qualified staff. With CBR enrollment, which means they would have to be over 18 and in the background registry. Let's see here. So we heard you on the risk benefit assessment. I know that there were some concerns raised in this group. Will all licensed programs have to use this form? Does it apply to field trips? So we have made some adjustments based on that feedback. The proposed use of this form is really going to be in the pre-certification visit, which is the visit that we do at CCLD when we're getting you prepped and ready for that initial licensing visit. And we're going to use that to really understand the environment in which you're working in, knowing that outdoor environments are all just a little bit different across the state. And depending on where you're at, things could look different. So we're going to use that risk benefit assessment as we move through your child caring space and hear your thoughts and how the risk and the benefit are considered based off of that space in the pre-certification process. The primary use for this form is for the outdoor classroom space. We heard that staff qualifications, both teacher and director, there was a question asked and kind of a point made that why would there be a different set of requirements for ONB staff than other than in licensing settings? We're still reviewing that way. So we're exploring options for different pathways for qualifications that incorporate experience, training, and education, or a combination, and really using that thinking of, when we build a rule set, we know that we're going to have experts who have been in this work for outdoor nature-based for a very long time. And we're also going to have a pathway for those who may have never run this kind of program before. And when this is a type of care that anybody who can show that they are qualified can run it, we at CCLD want to make sure that there is a basic level of understanding in or experience with running an outdoor nature-based program in the ways that it is different from when you are caring for children in a space where you don't have to think about the things that you do when you're in the outdoors. So we're still working through that, and we anticipate that we'll be doing some more engagement on this topic at further engagement opportunities such as the Rules Advisory Committee. Let's see. We heard that posting licensing requirements would be difficult since oftentimes there's not an area to post items. And we also heard that adverse weather limits the ability to post items. So we did change the language to read that items must be in a prominent and frequently visited location, which means that OMBs can maintain their program information in a binder at the OMB drop-off or pickup location if that binder is available for families to see. We heard that the ratio requirements reviewed during the meeting were too restrictive, but we're still reviewing that, and we do anticipate that there will be some adjustments, but we're not quite there yet and ready to bring it back out for review. But we are taking all of the feedback that you gave into consideration, and we hope to bring that out at further engagement opportunities. Similar with the risky play requirements. So we are looking at that as well based on your feedback. I'll pause there. Any thoughts or questions or comments?
I'll just say that Rachel in the chat says, thank you, and these adjustments are much appreciated. I know that that came in a couple slides ago too, so.
Thanks, Abby.
This is Ronnie. For the notes, could I please have what OELAO stands for?
Sure. Ronnie, I can help you with that. That is the Outdoor Early Learning Alliance of Oregon.
Thank you. And then there was one more. NAI?
I'm not, is that the one that was on the slide? Is that natural? No, that's the other alliance.
This was a comment where it was the suggestion to add other experts in the field that are NAI. Mackenzie, do you mind taking yourself off mute and providing the full name?
There's a variety of ones, and I think I'll email you that I think would be good. There's like marine educator groups and things like that I think would be good to pull from. But NAI is the National Association of Interpretation, and they have really great feedback, as you know, and they're larger in AAEE, which is Natural Start is a subset of that. I think those are all really great things to pull from, and that's what I've used in my profession over 20 years, working for the Forest Service, BLM, the aquarium in Hatfield. Those are all, I think, important ones to consider. That Natural Start is a wonderful one, and probably your main go-to, but I think there's other influences that are important to look at, the pedagogy that shapes this, as well as like forest kindergarten associations and things like that. Thank you.
Great feedback. Thank you, Mackenzie. We will capture that. Any other thoughts or comments on the summary kind of the adjustments of the work that we've done over the past few weeks?
I put a comment in, but I'm realizing now that I have some thoughts about mushrooms, and I'm wondering, is that a topic we already covered? Because I'm looking here and it's actually in the risky play it's in this risky play document you sent us, Washington Administrative Code for ONB risky play activities. And I don't remember discussing mushrooms. Is that something we can talk about today?
What would you like to bring up with that, Joseph?
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Carol. The Washington Administrative Code states plant foraging activities, bullet point number 4. This was in an email we received from Carol, I think last week.
Mm-hmm.
Mushrooms and other fungi of any variety must not be touched, picked, harvested, or consumed by children. I'm gonna go ahead and make the argument that that's impossible to enforce and completely unreasonable. I've got my own reasons for saying that, but I don't think it really matters what my reasons for saying it for it are, though. But I'll go ahead and give you my reasons. I live in the Illinois Valley. Mushroom foraging is, an absolutely primary part of what families do around here. We're extremely famous for our matsutakis. Mushrooms are absolutely prolific here, especially in the fall. The idea that you would walk through the forest with children and they would just simply, I mean, the way this is written, any variety touched. I mean, do you all, I mean, well, again, this isn't you all. I know Carol says this, and I understand it's Washington Administrative Code. I get that. But I'd love to see the evidence that forest preschoolers are, somehow being harmed in any way that's different from anything else by mushrooms and fungi. I mean, obviously, death caps and gallerinas are extremely dangerous. I definitely agree with that. But any fungi of any variety, and the children aren't allowed to touch them. I mean, that's impossible. You can't go. Have you ever walked in the forest with a 4-year-old? I mean, I'm sorry to be. I don't want to sound flippant, but I mean that needs to be rewritten.
Great. Thanks. Ronnie, I bet you she got that, she captured that in the notes. So thank you for that input, Joseph. See,
I have it. Thank you.
awesome. Mackenzie?
I just want to say that I'm not an expert in mushrooms. And so I don't feel comfortable with identifying ones that I'm, into having our students touch mushrooms that are ones that I'm not familiar with. However, that doesn't mean that someone like Joseph or Rachel or other folks on this call, or maybe other organizations within Oregon, don't have mushroom experts within their in their staff or in their wheelhouse. And so I think limiting us on a rule, I understand why some mushrooms are dangerous, as Joseph pointed out. But if you have an expert in that, I don't see why that would be, and they understand the false, ones that look similar, right? The false chanterelles versus chanterelles, right? If they can identify them, I don't see why that I wouldn't want another nature-based program to be limited based on my own lack of knowledge or comfortability. I think it's important in the document just above mushrooms, it says, talking about berries and how children don't touch them before they eat them, and they check with a staff who's an expert. I think a quick addition to mushrooms on that would be important. And I don't know how you prove that someone's a mushroom expert, but I do think that is important to tease out, that mushrooms, that should be an expert that's doing that. But I could totally see us doing a family program with mushrooms if we had a mushroom expert come to us. And there's a mushroom walk that happens every year in Yachats, and I could see our families going to that. And so to see us limited just because of my own limitations about something doesn't mean that another program can't do it. So I think it's important to allow that flexibility. Thanks.
Thank you, Mackenzie. Amy?
Yeah, just to reiterate and kind of support what Joseph and Mackenzie are saying, it would be nearly impossible to forbid a preschooler from touching fungi in the woods. They're growing on trees and logs that we're climbing over, and many of our preschoolers can identify quite a few very safe fungi, like turkey tails and then the witch's butter that grow in our site. So yeah, maybe adding something about, you have to just be extra sure, having an expert identify and agree. because the majority of the fungus that we do see are safe to the touch. There are very few. I can't think of any actually in our state that are dangerous to the touch. Definitely if ingested, but any good forest school is going to cover from, very early on that about not eating plants that you're not familiar with. So
Great. Thank you, Amy. Does anybody else have any sort of comments or feedback on the information that Alicia presented?
Rachel has put in the chat that she says that she agrees that the touching part takes it too far. However, like we've discussed, I absolutely see the need for guidelines around foraging. In our program, we have a very strict rule about nothing goes in your mouth when we're in the forest. In my experience, this is necessary when caring for 3-year-olds outdoors who lack the developmental maturity to consistently identify and remember to check with an adult before eating a plant.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. So if there's no other feedback, we can go ahead and start diving into our discussion topics for this last session. So next slide. Thank you. So this information was captured from Washington State's requirements, and this is how they determine their OMB program capacity. So for each child attending an OMB program, there must be a minimum of 4,000 square feet of natural space per child in attendance to support a nature-based curriculum unless otherwise approved by a parks director and the department. And for a permanently located outdoor classroom area, each child in attendance who is receiving instruction within that area must have a minimum of 75 square feet of space in that area per child in attendance, not including bathroom or diaper changing spaces or ground space occupied by shelves, features, or other equipment not intended to be accessible to children. So when thinking about this concept, you can think that the 4,000 square feet of natural space per child for activities that your program engages in is the overall. So think of it like an elementary school. That is your entire space. But your classroom space would be the 75 square feet that is considered your classroom space. So kind of with that context in mind, what are your thoughts on this requirement? With the understanding that 1 acre of land equals 43,000 square feet. So based on that calculation, 1 acre of land could possibly accommodate 10 children. So how large is the space all of you are working with? And what are your initial thoughts on Washington State's requirements for how they determine program capacity?
I own 1 acre. The fence is pushed in from the property line, so it's less than an acre. I do just fine with 16 kids on the property we have. We have a middle school track that's immediately next door to our property. How big is a track? It's a football field plus all the extra area around it. So it's a significant addition. And the middle school has always been very friendly to us. That property is open to the public. So we go out there almost every day. We go out there, run around a little bit. So it definitely helps to have that. But I don't see why you couldn't do 16 kids on an acre. We can do that. It's not a problem.
Thank you, Joseph. Does anybody else have any thoughts on this initial? Yes, Mackenzie.
I guess I'm curious where the 4,000 feet came from. Can you explain more as to why that number was picked?
So that was from, like I said, that was from the Washington State's requirements.
Right.
And they took into consideration impact of space from an environmental standpoint. And I believe that that was one of the guiding the guiding points for their decision making on the 4,000 square feet is after they consulted with certain land use and through their engagement process, that's the figure that they landed on to counteract some of those environmental impacts that groups of people and children could potentially put on the environment.
Okay. Is this for all outdoor nature-based programs, or is this for those located within a park? Because I've read park director in department.
So the unless otherwise approved by Parks Director and the department means that potentially there may be some flexibility on land use approval or park directors or something like that, that they may come back and say, based on the environment where we're located, the 4,000 square feet may be altered.
Okay, so if I can just bear with me, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I'm trying to understand this. So this particular rule is to help reduce the environmental impact on public parks. Is that correct?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
outside nature-based space.
Okay, so I think okay, so flip side, if this was a private piece of land, would there be a minimum square foot besides the 75 square feet that's required by DELC already?
So if I'm understanding your question, if it's a private piece of land, say like Joseph's,
Yes.
okay. So would there be adjustments made to that?
Yes.
Okay. And that's something we're still exploring.
Okay. So I would say if it's private land and the private landowner is okay with it and the director of the school is okay with it, I think that outdoor nature-based program doesn't need to be restricted to 4,000 square feet. As I love our Oregon parks, I think it's important to preserve them and then make them enjoyable for all people. So that seems reasonable to have that rule based, and I like that it's adjusted, if there's a park that's just under that, that there's an ability of flexibility. I appreciate that. However, if it's private land, I think going with the program capacities that is required by regular traditional care would make more sense, because you can set up your nature-based program in a different way to help reduce your environmental impact. It doesn't have to be, you're not preserving that classroom for, it's not a conservation area. And I think the tricky thing that you're going to run into, and I think we discussed this about a month ago now, is that finding land that is commercial based and outdoor ability, I don't know where you would find an area where you would put a school in most towns to have it be accessible to parents, to have it be meeting the land use requirements and 4,000 square feet per child. That's a lot of restrictions. So if you can have private land, I don't know, or that flexibility, I think that would be important. I do appreciate that you're looking at environmental impacts. That's really tricky.
Yeah, and that may be a process, like through the land use agreement that you have with the owner or something like that. But we're starting using Washington State's requirements. as a starting point for gathering just the information. And so your input is extremely valuable for us as we move forward with this.
Yeah, so I just say flexibility. As long as you can write flexibility in there, like you did with otherwise approved, and then have a clause for land, like private land, or I don't know. That seems very much like it's written for running a program in a public park,
Okay.
which I think is going to be tricky if you look at our. I mean, it's like several $100s a day if you try to rent a park. And that's for one day. I don't see how financially that would be feasible for programs. So, which is why we only go to state parks for field trips occasionally. Right. So, and I think just having it be flexible so you can have farmlands and things like that would be important. So thank you for the flexibility clause.
Mackenzie, follow-up question for you, or for the group, really. Using that train of thought, if we were to consider a difference between private land and public land, looking at the requirement that Washington has now for the permanently located outdoor classroom space, it states a minimum of 75 square feet per child in attendance. What are your thoughts on that number as a standalone if we're thinking about private land beyond just the 4,000 square foot per child environmental impact?
Alicia, you haven't been here for me to say this enough to you. I go back to what is the consistent rule that Delk already has. So what is the rule for certified center, traditional certified center? It's like 65 square feet, 75 square feet, somewhere around in there, right?
For inside,
So whatever
for
for outdoors.
For outdoors, it's 75.
Yeah, so that's what it would be, right? Like that makes sense. Right?
I'm not sure. Looking
Yeah.
at you all as the practitioners, 75 square feet per child, is actually not that much space. So if you're thinking about 10 kids, 750 square feet of outdoor space could be considered to keep 10 kids in. So if you can picture 750 square feet, it's not a ton of space.
So honestly, Alicia, I am a nomadic program and I don't, we go to multiple different locations. And so a 75 square feet because it sounds like we have to have a permanent classroom. So I'm looking at that, right? And trying to swing, where can we find one in town that's commercial property that's, adjacent to field trip locations, those kind of things. So looking at that, I think the less restrictions possible would be great, because at this point, what I've learned from this group is that if I want to become a licensed program, I need to invest at least $75,000 in transportation or $500,000 in land, at least. So the financial burden of this and the requirements that you're putting on programs, I don't know, 75 square feet, and that's where I'm going to spend my, all day, every day. That's not what I want, but I love going on field trips. And that's what our school is based on, is on adventures and going on field trips throughout Lincoln County. And so, public land, private land, we have farms that we connect with that are private. And we occasionally go on a field trip, just like the other schools do in our area, to public land. And so when I look at this, I go, okay, 75 square feet. Can the lot in town that I've been looking at, since you guys said that I can't be nomadic and I have to spend $500,000 on it, can that be, swingable? I don't know. So the more restrictions you put on it, the less outdoor nature-based programs you're going to have. And that's not going to help the childcare desert. So that's my 2 cents. If you're stuck in a, less than an acre, all the time and not doing programming outside of there, that would be, I think, not rich, right? It would be, you would have to have a lot more activities to do. It would be a watered down version. A lot of what I'm hearing is that these programs will be very much watered down. If we can't like touch mushrooms, we can't pick berries, we can't climb rocks, we can't climb trees. Everything has to be approved. This is becoming very much watered down.
Could I talk too? Mackenzie just said a lot of really important stuff. I first of all, uh, the word park is not the right word. I think it was Alicia used the word public lands. That's the right word that you want to use. Also, the conservation goals and the capacity of a piece of land, that is, the purpose of a lot of the public lands that we visit is wildlife habitat. Like, for example, there's a trail at Forks Park that we go to that is a very well-known botanical area that a lot of botanists study every year. For, I don't even know, decades. They've been coming out with their clipboards and their measuring tape, studying these flowers. And where the kids run through that area. And so I think that it is important that the head ranger at in the Rogue State Park area is aware that we're running through there, and that, because we don't go that often, and because it's a large area and we only have 12, 16 kids or whatever, it's not going to kill the flowers. So I think that is important. I don't see how you're going to measure that. I mean, you guys aren't botanists and conservationists, the park director is the one who's going to know that. But I mean, that's something to think about. The thing that I think that's really important about what Mackenzie said is, when we go to Forks Park, and that's where we started our program at Forks, it's the most beautiful place to bring children I've ever been to. The head ranger found out who we were. I didn't tell him. I didn't tell him who we were. He found out who we were. And I was invited to attend a meeting with the BLM and the state parks and the Friends of the Parks and some local businesses. And they really celebrated the work that I was doing. I wasn't expecting that. And the head ranger told me, Nathan Sable at Valley of the Rogue, he told me that what we are doing is normal use. That's what he said to me. He said, this is normal use. You're bringing the kids to the park. That's normal use. And he told me, he gave me some very specific things. I'm not allowed to accept money from families on the premises, like in the parking lot. I'm not allowed to claim exclusive use of any part of the park. And that can theoretically be a problem because there's a gazebo there that when it's raining, it's really the only shelter we have. And so we go to the gazebo. The thing is, though, is nobody is in the park when it's raining like that anyway. So we end up with the gazebo and we never have to get a special use permit. And I've never given Nathan Sable any money. And he's always been very friendly to us. He waves and smiles. I don't know if that is scalable, Mackenzie. I don't know if there's a Nathan Sable in every state park in the state of Oregon. Some of these park rangers might have a very different attitude. So it's a really good point, actually. If it wasn't for the normal use, I would have been out of business a long time ago. So I think a really important is, how can we make it possible for groups of children for more than 4 hours to meet with teachers in our parks and in our public lands, BLM lands, Forest Service lands, and be okay and be legit, because We have the most beautiful public lands in the country, in Oregon. Really, I've been all over. There's nothing more beautiful than the parks and the public lands we have. And the children deserve to go to those places. And the reason we're doing this campaign is to open up the opportunity to the broader public, so larger numbers of kids, some of whom come from families that really don't have these enriched experiences, where they can still afford to go because they can get ERDC or because they can qualify for grants and things, and they can get 8 hours or 6 hours or 5 hours of care. So it's important. I think normal use really is an important piece of all this. I think I'm talking too much, so
Thank you, Joseph. I noticed,
Sure.
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Carol, I just wanted to mention there are a couple things in the chat. Rebecca, and this is back on the previous subject of mushrooms. It just came in a little after we moved on. Says that I also agree with reviewing the wording and adding some clearer exemptions rather than just saying no touching in regards to mushrooms. And then especially for those who are mushroom experts or live in a mushroom thriving community. And then Rachel said that I think this seems reasonable, and that is, I think, in regards to the square footage on the screen. Our outdoor space is around 3 acres. With under 4,000 square feet, the children would have quite an impact on the landscape. And then Rachel makes the suggestion it's maybe be helpful for us to name the types of outdoor spaces we operate, which Joseph did speak to that, but of course welcome others to share what their environment is like. And then Rachel also makes the point or states that while I think we all aspire to make licensing accessible to as many programs as possible, it's good to remember that licensing may not be the best fit for all outdoor nature-based programs. Recorded programs will not be subject to these rules, and some folks may opt to stick with that option, but having the choice is progress. And Mackenzie says, great points, Joseph. Amy says, our preschool site is on 3 acres with access to another 30 acres of wetlands. Thanks for sharing, Amy.
Any other thoughts or feedback for us?
Yeah, I have a question. Can this committee or can DELC go talk to the head ranger at the Oregon State Parks and ask them what they think about normal use, classrooms, and not charging Mackenzie $100 a shot? Is there a way to just go right to the head ranger at the state parks? I mean, you guys have Alicia, I forgot her last name.
It's Gardiner. I am here. Yes.
You are here, aren't you?
Yes.
You probably have quite a bit of clout at the state right now. I wonder if the head ranger at the state parks would just pick up if you called.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I've been listening to the really important feedback that you and Mackenzie have provided. And I mean, just for the group in general, like when I hear Mackenzie say, there are concerns around the requirements, I just encourage the committee to remind themselves and remind each other, like, we're still in draft form, right? We don't have final rules yet. And when we present Washington's rules, we're doing so to gain feedback from you all. So we are taking that feedback and looking at it in comparison to what Washington has created and see what is best for our state. And to your question, Joseph, I certainly what's rolling through my mind is, programs can absolutely take field trips, and we've always had the intent to ensure that there are rules around the field trips so that you can go explore other parts of the state, or in your region, in your area. If you want to take children to a beautiful piece of land, that's going to be an option for licensed ONB programs in the field trip process and the field trip rules, where you are starting at a home base and then returning at your home base. Now, as far as your comment on regular use, I am not familiar enough to know the laws and regulations that are regulated over the state parks, but we can certainly note that as a concern and take a look at that. I'm not sure if there is consistency or not in those areas. If you're feeling like you've heard there's inconsistency, it's certainly something we can reach out to them on behalf of this group and try to figure out, if we can understand what those laws or regulations are looking like, if they are up to the discretion of the parks rangers or not. I'm not quite sure about that. It sounds like you may know more than I do on this topic.
I thought, Amy, I thought I saw your hand up, but it's now.
I did. Yeah, I think we're tasked with a difficult job here. I think all of us want to make outdoor nature-based preschools widely accessible to as many kids as possible. And I think all of us here in the work group, from who are already doing this work, I think we all want to make it accessible. And I think that we have a lot of insight that comes with years of experience. And it's how do we replicate our models for people who haven't done this before? And I think it's really challenging. But also, if Delk wants existing programs to become certified, then we have to come up with some regulations that are a little open. Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is not being too strict on creating like exact parameters, like you have to have 4,000 square feet per child, because that's going to make licensing unobtainable for some people. Like others have said, land use fees are really high. If you want to, like our school got super fortunate that we have a property owner who believes in our cause, our property to us at a very, very low rate. We really hit the jackpot with that. If not for her, we couldn't afford to rent, 3 acres in town to host our programs. So just, I guess what I'm asking is Delk to be mindful of existing programs and creating regulations in a way that doesn't box out existing programs. And I wish you luck on that, because I can only imagine how challenging this is going to be moving forward.
Thank you, Amy.
So Carol, Mackenzie has some comments in the chat that says, environmentally speaking, it would depend on the specific environments and types of animals and plants that are on site. And so working with the director of the Parks Department makes the most sense to avoid any sensitive areas or species. And then she's also thanked Amy for her comments as well.
Thank you all for your feedback on this. We've captured your thoughts, and again, we are still working on drafting these rules, and so we're going to take your thoughts and all your considerations into mind when we are continuing to draft our rules. So let's go ahead and take a quick 5-minute break. So if you can be back by little after 6:40, 6:42, that would be fantastic. Okay, well, we will get back started again. If you want to go to the next slide. Thank you, Alicia. So in the topic email that I sent out on Thursday, I went ahead and sent attached some draft emergency preparedness rules. Those rules we aligned with our child care center rules that we have, as well as we pulled in some Washington State's rules as well. What's important for you all to know is, as Alicia mentioned before, we are federally mandated by CCLD, or CCLD is federally mandated to have rules regarding emergency preparedness and response planning. Those are those CCDF requirements that she was talking about. So this is required for all licensed programs, and the information must cover emergencies resulting from natural disaster or man-made events, procedures for evacuation, relocation, shelter in place, and lockdown, staff and volunteer emergency preparedness training and practice drills, and communication and reunification with families, continuity operations, and accommodations of children with disabilities and children with chronic medical conditions. So those requirements are things that we have to have in every rule set. But within that, we also included a couple additional things that were specific to outdoor nature-based. So if you want to go to the next slide, please. And try clicking on the OMB. Yay. Well, that worked. That's awesome. So the emergency preparedness plan will be required prior to licensing. And so I want to take this opportunity to kind of walk you through these requirements and get your initial reactions to see what you think about them. So on here. I just lost you guys.
We're here, Carol, we're here.
I know, I'm sorry, I lost my slides. This is just, has not been my evening here. Okay, I cannot locate my information, so hang on.
While Carol is working on that, just calling out Rachel's comment in the chat. Abby, do you want to read it and then I can respond?
Yeah, Rachel says, just in case this seems daunting to unlicensed folks, keep in mind that there are templates provided for emergency preparedness that you can simply fill in for your specific programs.
And one thing that CCLD will do after these rules are in place is we will have an implementation phase where our staff will create documents that will help and assist with developing program policies if you need that assistance. And so we will have a template for emergency planning also that we will be able to offer to outdoor nature-based programs where it's a little like fill in the blank. Right. And so and couple that with any resources. Rachel, if you've got resources, we're happy to look at those too, specific to emergency planning in outdoor nature-based programs, just for helping people think through kind of what they need to do from that perspective. So thanks for that comment.
And Abby, I'm wondering if you could go ahead and help out here. My slides got all messed up here, just for a couple minutes while I try to. Here we go. I am so sorry.
Okay. So So as discussed on the previous slide, many of the requirements in the emergency preparedness plan that are, oh, you got it? Okay.
Yes.
Happy to be your understudy.
Oh, no, you don't, no. So, so as I mentioned before, I want to walk you through kind of what our draft emergency preparedness and response plan rules are. Again, these are strictly in draft form, but they'll kind of give you a general idea of what we are kind of leaning towards. So a certified OMB program must have a written plan for emergency preparedness that OMB program staff will follow unless otherwise instructed by emergency personnel. So the emergency preparedness plan must be specific to the OMB premises and able to be implemented during hours of operation. The emergency preparedness plan must address the following in all emergencies. That's defining roles and responsibilities for all staff, ensuring that all children in attendance are supervised and accounted for during and after an emergency, addressing the needs of individual children, including children with disabilities or other specific needs and children with chronic medical conditions, identifying methods for alerting staff of the emergency, ensuring children's emergency contact information and medical authorization and staff emergency contact information is accessible during and after an emergency, notifying emergency authorities, including the Poison Control Center when necessary, notifying parents after the emergency ends, and how children will be reunited with their families as the evacuation, relocation, or sheltering lockdown is lifted. Thank you. Identifying a licensed physician, hospital, or clinic to be used for emergency medical care. Addressing what the OMB program must do if children are not able to be picked up for an extended period due to a natural or other disaster, including access to copies of records, documents, and computer files necessary for continued operation, stored in either a portable file or at an off-site location. The emergency preparedness plan must address procedures for evacuating children to a designated safe area, including the evacuation routes to be taken, moving children to a designated location for sheltering in place and lockdown emergencies, relocating children to a nearby alternative shelter, and medical emergencies such as serious illness, serious injury, or death of a child or staff, including what the OMB program staff will do if a staff member has an emergency to ensure children are not left unsupervised. In responding to natural and man-made disasters, including but not limited to fire or smoke, earthquake, lockdown notification order by a public safety authority.
Carol, do you want to pause there or keep going?
I'll pause if anybody has any thoughts, initial thoughts or feedback.
Rachel asked, can you please point out how these differ from regular guidelines for license programs? And Carol, I'm happy to kind of respond to that as much as I can. Sure. The items listed in section 3, and I will say that we I believe all of those items are actually in the CC required emergency response plan. They've just been reorganized. So everything in 3 is in the CC emergency response plan. Certified centers also have to address evacuating children to a safe area. Moving children or sheltering in place looks different may look different in a CC because it's more about staying within the building itself. So that is worded slightly differently. Facilities do need to identify like a reunification site, so that is the same. And then all programs have to describe how they will respond to medical emergencies. And then responding to natural, and Mackenzie has a point of human-made, not man-made, to make more exclusive or inclusive language. Thank you for pointing that out to us. And again, there are, I think, almost all, we may not say smoke in certified center, but they do have to have plans for fire and other natural disasters that may occur. We do have responses for, so when we get into things about extreme weather conditions, again, this might look a little different in outdoor nature-based because you are outside, but we do require that certified centers are monitoring for conditions that could be hazardous to children, which does include some weather and temperatures. So things though that are in here that are not in center are things like strong winds, falling trees or large branches. And I think those are kind of the bigger ones. We do identify the specific weather conditions in this section that I don't think we actually do identify all of those in CC or certified center. And then, yes, they are required to have a plan for a missing or a lost child. Outdoor nature-based are required to have plans for encounters with dangerous wildlife. That is not included in CC. Drowning child or water-related emergency, there is also a requirement for swimming and water in CC. So that is, the wording is a little different, but it is essentially the same requirement. Hostile intruders is also in certified center. Again, the wording is a little different. G, responding to suspected child abuse, is the same. And then determining whether to cancel or alter the daily schedule is something that is specific to outdoor nature-based, considering, and that's when you're taking into consideration making plans for if there are weather conditions that may be hazardous to children, and then deciding whether you need to alter or cancel your plans for the day based on that. So, and then 5, about like reviewing the plan, ensuring that it's updated. Those are all part of certified center, as well as are the practicing of drills, and then the emergency supply kit. So it's very, very similar. There are just a couple of additions that are unique to the environment. So Rachel says, this will definitely take careful review with seasoned outdoor nature-based practitioners, because many programs operate multiple sites and things like lockdown become almost irrelevant outdoors. It's tricky to capture all the nuance, and yes, definitely. So thank you for that feedback, Rachel. And good questions.
So one of the items, number 8, a certified ONB program must have an emergency supply kit carried by at least one staff member per group of children in care, including during emergency evacuation. And the supplies must include, at a minimum, first aid supplies, hand sanitizer, wet wipes and tissue, a whistle or air horn, a working flashlight or headlamp, and a functional telephone or other method of contacting emergency services. So what I get with number 8 in particular, what type of items do you typically take when you go on field trips or outings or something like that? What items do you typically take in a backpack? Or do you?
It looks like, I believe this is Joseph. All our children carry their own drinking water in their backpacks, including the 3-year-olds. Rachel says, we don't have an air horn, but otherwise everything else that is listed. Oh, Rachel also has a comment that says, this is about nuances and how it's tricky to capture things that she has both a classroom and an outdoor space. So her licensor requests that we do drills in both locations. And Joseph also mentions that he carries extra water. So just a note on water here again. And then Amy mentions that we carry a first aid kit, cell phone, extra water, whistle, and our students carry their own backpacks with snacks and water and extra layers if needed. Thank you.
Great. So it does sound like a lot of what you all carry for field trips are basically the A, B, C, and D for the most part. So that's great to see.
I have a question, or I don't know, topic or something. In the licensing rules, certain items have to be, I'm pretty sure, actually locked. Maybe it's out of reach of the children. Maybe that's an acceptable exception, but I know when Renee comes to our licensed micro center, she checks. She wants to see that, like medication, for example, is locked. So you got I don't know about hand sanitizer is basically toxic. And so me and Renee had conversations about putting a padlock on a backpack. I mean, one of the pockets of the backpack has a padlock, and I had a hard time with all that. And I'm just wondering, I don't see that here, so maybe I just shouldn't have said anything. But how are we going to deal with? Because I don't have a lot of medication. It's very, very rare. But I did have a girl that needed what's that pink stuff you put on your rash? Calamine lotion. And we're a recorded program. No one's going to inspect us. But I remembered the rules. I wrote her name on the bottle, and I made sure it was in the original bottle, and it was labeled by the original bottle, and I kept it in my backpack. And I just make sure that kids don't get into my backpack. Is that going to work?
Is your back, if you have control of your backpack, we altered our emergency, I believe, Abby, you correct me if I'm wrong. Did we alter the medication, the ongoing like asthma emergency medication, to be able to be not stored under child safety lock if it's on the person?
Yes. But I also want to say that the way we made significant changes when we redid the certified center rules to allow for flexibility in keeping things out of reach or what we call inaccessible to children. And we allowed for programs to kind of show us how they keep these items, these hazards, such as medication or, cleaners, away from children, recognizing that programs look very different and what they have available is very different. And I imagine that when we start to draft rules for outdoor nature-based programs, there will be some flexibility in how things look and how your programs are keeping children away from different types of hazards. The emergency medication like inhalers and EpiPens can be carried on a person. And that is in rule currently for certified centers. So I imagine that a similar type rule would move over to outdoor nature-based programming. And that again, we would really look to see how much flexibility we could have for programs to be in compliance with the inaccessibility of hazards rules.
And Joseph, just for context, that isn't found in this set of rules because this is really about like a written plan and then practicing to the written plan related to emergencies. However, just like this one, this topic, emergency preparedness, is required from a federal perspective. Medication administration is also one of the 11 health and safety topics that I talked about at the beginning of the meeting, where we are required to have rules on this, and they will likely look very similar across every rule set, including O&B, because we are required to have those on a federal level for the administration of the medication, not necessarily the storage of, but just wanted to flag also that that's another thing we have to work through in the development of this rule set.
So I just wanted to read some of the chat. Mackenzie says that 8 looks good. We don't carry a flashlight at the moment, but that would be an easy add. And then I think each program can decide what else they need. Some programs carry bear spray, and that she appreciates the flexibility in having control of a backpack versus a lock.
So in your opinion, would you recommend us adding anything additional? Did we miss something that you all carry in your backpack that we should include into the rules?
The only thing that I could think of to add would be medications as needed. Like we have a kid who is severely allergic to bees, so we bring a teacher carries his EpiPen. So bringing necessary medications on outings.
Thanks, Amy. And again, back to those federal requirements, we do also have to have rules related to response to children that have severe allergies. While it's not in this emergency planning portion of the rule set, there will be requirements that we have to put in place that talk about what is that child's allergy? What is the plan to respond to that child's allergy? And, relevant medication rules also. So I appreciate that you're already thinking ahead on that and you've already got experience with that, because that is something we'll have to put in place also.
Rachel mentions that for medication, they carry a small bag with a lock. And Rachel also mentions that, again, there are templates for emergency care plans, and that is very true. We do have a lot of templates for a lot of things, especially those federally required things, so that programs know all of the requirements, and we know that they are meeting the federal requirements as well if they're following those plans.
Mm-hmm. So if there's nothing else, Alicia, you can go ahead and advance the slide.
Mackenzie does have her hand raised. Sorry about that.
I would really like to go back to number 4. Just real quick. Emergency preparedness plan must address the following procedures. So question I have is actually 4H. So it's going to be on the next page. Thank you. Okay. So determining whether to cancel based on OAR. Is that OAR already written? Is that rule written, or is that X'd out because that is something that you are currently writing?
Correct.
That's actually, I believe, if you scroll up, there's a section on whether, right there.
On D?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I also had a question about D. So this is just a plan based on these potential weather hazard. Is that correct? That so, for example, we operate in strong winds. We were out there today in 40-mile-an-hour winds, and everyone was safe. So, and wasn't a concern. So is that's my understanding, right? Is that we'll have plans in place to keep kids safe, but we'll still be able to operate in wind of like 90 miles an hour, for example. Is that true?
So what I can tell you is an emergency plan isn't something where we're going to be evaluating on and telling you when you need to close down. That's actually not what the emergency plan is intended for. The emergency plan is intended for programs to think ahead about what to do when you are operating and something occurs where you're going to need to respond to keep children safe. So our intent isn't like, in the event of an emergency, chances are you're not going to be able to close down. You're going to have those kids in your care and you're going to need to know how to care for them. So the intent of the emergency plan is to get programs to think ahead on the best possible response. And then also another component of the plan below is the practice of such. And so practicing your drills and your evacuation drills helps get that muscle memory, so you know how to respond in the event of an actual emergency. So Mackenzie, the intent of the plan is not to say, we expect you to close down, and the intent is to have you think ahead on how you're going to protect children.
Okay, so the items listed under 4D, the extreme weather conditions, those are not saying that if it's 102 outside, we can't operate, or if it's 18 degrees outside, we can't operate. Is that correct? It's just you have a plan.
Yes, you have.
That's correct. Yeah, if you look
Okay.
at the start, the emergency preparedness plan must address procedures for responding to natural and human-made disasters, including but not limited to sudden onset of extreme weather conditions that may pose a health and safety risk, such as the list.
Great. At any point, are you planning on putting any restrictions on items that would be listed under 4D?
Can you explain what you mean by restrictions?
So this is saying that we would have a plan in place if there was a sudden onset, but if we are operating, like, will there be a restriction saying you cannot operate if it's 18 degrees outside? Will there be anything listed under 4D, for example, the temperature or strong winds that will come up in licensing?
Not, no, this plan is just how
Okay.
we'll be able to keep children safe, because
Fantastic.
everyone's environment's a little bit different and they
Yep.
have resources available.
Fantastic. I love that you are trusting us to have a plan to keep kids safe. We are also trusting us as the experts in this. So thank you so much for doing this. This was one of my biggest concerns when I started this and this group was your opinions about winds. And we found a way to make sure they're safe. And I'm really happy to hear that you're having us just have a plan in place, that there's not going to be a closure because of a certain arbitrary number. So fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, and Mackenzie, to provide some additional context on how the licensing process works. Once you are granted a license and we have approved your operating hours and your authority to operate under these rules, CCLD is not going to be able to have the authority to tell you to close down without a legal action. So once we've granted you that license, you have the ability to operate. However, we will monitor for compliance with the rules. And when we have programs who are demonstrating severe noncompliance or inability or unwillingness to follow the rules, or even more horrible things like mistreatment of children, then we have the authority to take legal action at CCLD. So that is how we tell programs to close. It's through and all of the legal actions that we take have hearing rights, which means that programs have the ability to request a hearing, to go before a judge, an administrative hearing judge. And so that's a little bit how the structure works. We don't have the we wouldn't have the ability to say you must close down. And so that's why the rules are so important, so that they are structured in a way that keep kids safe at all times. And so an emergency plan is a part of that.
Fantastic. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't going to be we can't operate under 25 degrees because that would limit a large portion of Oregon in the winter. So, or over 100. So, or for us, high winds. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I appreciate that it's part of it definitely is a health concern and safety risk. So I appreciate that that is in there, but I appreciate that that we can use our best judgment as practitioners that have been in the field for a long time, that we can help keep kids safe and also stay open. So thank you.
I also, Carol, or Alicia, could you scroll down? I want to make sure that, and this is for Ronnie, just for notes. Ronnie, could you just put in a reminder for us to look at H to make sure that H is really about if the program decides to cancel, or if the program decides they have to go to an alternate location based on weather. And I just want to make sure that when we draft this language, that's clear, that it's not about like Delk saying you can't operate, but when you may make the choice that the environment may not be safe for children, that you are canceling, and how you're communicating that information to families.
I got it. Thank you.
Are there any other thoughts or suggestions for this draft rule set? Awesome. Ooh, Joseph got a thumbs up. That's awesome. Great. If you want to advance to there we go. So we are at the conclusion of our meeting. I want to go over some next steps with you in terms of what our rulemaking process is. So we will continue to review all your comments and suggestions that we received, not only at this meeting, but at the other meetings as well, to develop the proposed rule language. There is going to be a public comment and public hearing, and those dates will be announced on the DELC website. There is a rule advisory committee, or a RAC, and that will take place in November of 2024. Typically, those announcements for RAC recruitment go out at least 30 days to 45 days in advance. So you can go ahead and be on the lookout for that. The rules will be presented to the Early Learning Council for adoption in the spring of 2025, and they will be implemented in July of 2025. As we move forward with developing this rule set, I just wanted to ask if you all would be willing to serve as like on a consultant basis if we have questions that come up. We really value your feedback and your input. And we, again, as we have stated throughout this process, we truly want to make these rules accessible to everyone while still ensuring the health and safety of children. And so we want to look to you as experts in the field to go ahead and help provide us some of that information when we do have questions. And so I can see several people popping into the chat that you would be more than willing. And so I'm really happy to hear that. And so, okay, great. Thank you. Abby, I'll let you read the comments for streaming.
Sure. There, Rachel has put into the chat a link to a the case they use for medication, and then put a luggage lock on it through the zippers, which has or just as a resource for folks. And then, as you said, there are several people that are willing to be consultants for us. And then Mackenzie also says yes, that there are many people with OELAO that would also like to have the opportunity to provide input.
Great. Thank you so much. If you want to advance the slide. So again, we thoroughly want to thank you for everything that you have provided us, all the information. We could not be where we are at right now without your consultation and expertise. You've provided us a lot of information to consider, and we truly appreciate all you do to ensure that children have access to the outdoor nature-based models. You will be compensated for your time. You're going to want to watch your email for reimbursement instructions. The email may not be coming from either me nor Abby, but it will clearly indicate that it is for work group reimbursement. And it will have directions on the information you need to supply, as well as the process for receiving your reimbursement. And if you have any other questions or comments or anything, you can always feel free to contact me. You all have my email address, and I would just love to be able to stay in contact with you as questions arise. So if there are no other questions or comments,
Yeah, can I ask a question really quick? Sorry. I know you've sent us some emails already, and I have those PDF attachments, but are we at a place yet where a draft of the rules as where they're at right now could just be sent out as a full packet yet, or we gotta wait a couple more months for that, or?
We're still really in the process of developing those. And so we meet weekly for at least 2 hours. And so we still really are doing research, going ahead and reviewing information. And so we don't have a draft yet in place that we could send out.
I just put in the rules draft will be posted for public comment for review. Carol and Abby, do you have the dates on that handy?
The full draft will be available for review for public comment in winter. So that probably won't happen until maybe December or January. But the RAC, the Rule Advisory Committee, will occur before that. And there will be, those will be open to the public, similar to these. They'll be live streamed. So there will be an opportunity for folks to view more language, proposed rule language, both those that are on the Rule Advisory Committee, and then as it's live streamed as well. And I believe that will happen in November.
Mm-hmm.
The Rulemaking Advisory Committee will happen in November.
Mm-hmm.
Rachel asked, will outdoor nature-based providers be included in the RAC? The RAC works very similar to this work group. So there will be an open recruitment, and we usually accept or offer about 12 to 15 participants to join the Rulemaking Advisory Committee. We, of course, will be looking for outdoor nature-based providers to join that, as well as other interested parties. We try to get folks from parents, of course, of young children, as well as several of our partners, like representatives from the early learning hubs or the CCR&Rs, childcare resource and referral agencies, other community partners or agencies that we may work with, such as environmental health, but it is an open recruitment. So, and the announcement for that will be up on our website when it becomes available, as well as in our childcare update emails. So if you're not getting those yet, we would advise you to opt in to receive those updates. And Mackenzie has a hand up.
Just a quick question. How many sites have you visited so far?
So we have not yet visited sites. I have been in contact with Washington State, and they have said that we could come up and visit a couple of their licensed sites. We just need to go ahead and coordinate those. And then a couple of the participants of this work group have offered for us to come and visit their sites as well. And so we just are in the process of kind of formalizing those and having that opportunity be available for our rulemaking staff.
How many people or how many different sites are you planning to visit, and what does that timeline look like?
Thanks, Mackenzie. We're not prepared to answer that today. What I can tell you is that while this group does intend and has plans to do that, so we can learn along and also do site visits on Washington, what I can also tell you is we across the organization, which is over 100 people, including many field licensing specialists, we have interacted and do have institutional knowledge where we have seen these programs. I mean, Joseph's program is a good example where we have a licensing specialist who has been out and visited the program. So we are working on that piece of that for our policy unit, but as of right now, we're not prepared to give you a timeline.
Okay, how many people are on that have that institutional knowledge are on the rule writing committee?
So right now, Mackenzie, we have internal engagement process, which is different from somebody who is a rules writer, where their role and responsibility is to write rules for all of the organization. But rest assured, we have a long road ahead of us in terms of engagement, and happy to hear your feedback along the way.
Well, if there are no other questions, again, thank you. And I hope you have a nice rest of your evening. Thank you so much.